Hearing from the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, now about that infamous anti-tariff ad that led to a suspension of Canada-U.S. trade talks.
Well, that's up to the Prime Minister. I'll tell you what I would do. I'd never apologize to Donald Trump. Donald Trump's trying to destroy our province, destroy our country, steal manufacturing jobs and auto sector jobs, steel jobs, aluminum jobs. The list keeps going on. I'll never apologize to President Trump, and I'm going to continue fighting for the people of Ontario and the people of Canada.
He slammed the door. And now the consequences are unfolding. Picture this. A U.S. president demands an apology from our long-standing neighbor. The neighbor in turn refuses and walks away. Tensions escalate. Trade talks freeze. Jobs hang in the balance. Welcome to the latest between the United States and Canada. It starts with a blunt statement. The President of the United States says he's been offended and that he expects a formal apology from Canada. What triggered this? What's really going on behind the scenes? And why should every American and Canadian be paying attention? Let's break it down. At the center of this storm is a controversial advertisement. The provincial government of Ontario ran a TV spot directed at American audiences using excerpts from a 1987 speech by former U.S. President Ronald Reagan, where he criticized tariffs. The ad was meant to highlight how protectionism hurts consumers and workers. But it landed like a provocation. The U.S. president interpreted it as a direct challenge, a hostile act, he called it, and demanded an apology. He claimed the ad misused Reagan's words and dug into trade talks. Trade negotiations with Canada are now terminated. We're talking major impact. From Canada's side, the Prime Minister confirmed that yes, he apologized for the decision to run the ad. He said he had concerns about it, told the Ontario Premier it was not something I would have done.
I did apologize to the president. The president was offended by the act, or by the ad rather, and it's not something I would have done.
But in the end, accepted responsibility. Stop for a second and picture the scale. Two neighbors, largest trading partners in the world, suddenly at crossroads. The U.S. says, "We demand respect. We demand an apology." Canada says, "We're not your subordinate. We'll behave on our own terms." The fallout is already stretching out. Tariffs are threatened, trade negotiations halted, diplomatic niceties unraveled. Here's where things get interesting for you, the American viewer. Why does this matter? Because you buy products made in Canada, you work in businesses that rely on cross-border supply chains, you live in a country whose economy is deeply intertwined with our neighbor. When trade talks freeze, supply chains get disrupted, prices go up, jobs get threatened. And when a major global economic partnership fractures, everywhere feels it. Back to the story. After the ad aired during the World Series, the Ontario government pulled it. But by then, the damage was done.
We have a great relationship. I'll tell you one thing, what he did do. He called me from Asia a couple times and said, pull the ad. And I said I wasn't going to do it until we're going to pause the ad on Monday. And that's exactly what we did. It was 12.4 billion impressions around the world. And they talked about it on the Senate floor. I love the fact that 4 Republicans jumped over and voted against tariffs on Canada. So they were very effective, and they ended up getting rejuvenating the talks.
U.S. ambassador to Canada got dragged into the controversy. Ontario's premier said the ambassador should apologize for his expletive-laced tirade aimed at an Ontario trade representative. The U.S. president responded with public messaging on his social media platform, stating no talks with Canada until conditions change. Tensions escalated, gestures froze, the handshake of diplomacy vanished. The president declared that all trade negotiations with Canada are terminated. Time. So let's dig into what's really at stake here. First, the doctrine of national sovereignty and dignity. The U.S. expects an apology that's not just about the ad, it's about being treated with respect, about American leadership. Canada says, we're a sovereign nation. We decide our messages, our ads, our trade. That clash is symbolically massive. Second, the economics. When the U.S. drops trade talks, you're asking your businesses and workers to absorb risk. Canadian exports that flow into the U.S. imports from Canada, everything gets challenged. Tariffs, delays, costs. And the president has already threatened a 10% tariff on Canadian imports because of the ad. Third, the precedent. If one province of Canada can produce an ad aimed at an American audience and upset the U.S. so much that trade talks end, what message does it send to the rest of the world? That America's response to perceived insults is swift, and that allies will pay the price. Now let's walk through the timeline and the way you'll hear it in the narration. Ontario launches the ad. The U.S. sees it as fake, manipulative, insulting. The president reacts, stops trade negotiations, demands apology. Canada responds. Prime Minister says sorry for the campaign, but emphasizes Canada will stand on its own. U.S. ambassador is embroiled. Diplomatic temperature drops. Trade frozen. Jobs, markets watching. Imagine being a U.S. manufacturer relying on Canadian steel. Suddenly you face uncertain tariffs. Or an American automaker whose Canadian-based supplier now faces risk. Or a Canadian tourist working in the U.S. relations freeze and everybody watches. Let's be clear, there are no winners when liquid trust between neighbors evaporates. Trade deals aren't just pieces of paper. They're commitments that allow businesses to plan, invest, hire, export. When one side says no more, the entire chain feels it. And the ad itself, dig into the roots. By using Ronald Reagan's words about tariffs, the Ontario government meant to strike a chord with Americans. Reagan is a revered figure in the GOP. Quoting him is like using a brand. But the U.S. president interpreted it as weaponized. He said the ad was fraudulent, misused Reagan, and thus unacceptable. So here's the bottom line. The U.S. demanded an apology because, from Washington's perspective, this was more than an ad. It was a calculated intervention in American public opinion. Canada slammed the door because Ottawa refuses to be lectured or bullied about how it engages in public discourse, even if that ruffles its biggest trading partner. Now let's finish strong with what happens next, what you should watch for, and why it matters. Watch for whether trade negotiations resume. Will the U.S. drop the tariffs threat? Will Canada diversify away from the U.S. market? Will Canadian provinces start more aggressive ads, forcing Washington's hand? And how will American consumers and workers feel the ripple effect? Think about your own paycheck, your own industry. If tariffs hit Canadian goods harder, you could see price shocks on goods or retaliatory measures that hit U.S. exports. If trust erodes, new deals get harder. Global competitors jump in, supply chains reroute. That means uncertainty, and uncertainty always hits the small business guy hardest. And here's a human angle. A neighbor you used to rely on now stepping back. Respect on one side is demanded. Independence on the other is insisted. That tension isn't just political, it's human, economic, emotional. The U.S.-Canada relationship was once taken for granted. Now it's under strain and we're all watching. So what should you remember? The president demanded an apology. Canada refused to offer more than a limited concession. Trade talks froze. Tariffs loom. And you, the American citizen, worker, consumer, are in the ripple zone. Because when the largest bilateral trade relationship hits turbulence, we all feel it. Stay tuned, watch the headlines. Because this isn't just about one ad, one province, one president. It might just redefine how America engages with its longest-standing neighbor. And that could reshape jobs, prices, and politics in the U.S. and Canada alike. Thanks for watching. Stay informed, stay sharp, and as always, keep your eyes on the global chessboard.